Hedeby, the trading town at the neck of Denmark, the year 950. Dawn fog on the inlet, salt and tar in the air, 60 ships nosed up against the jetties. 2 men stand over a bale of Volga furs, and one of them pours out a handful of silver coins struck 4,000 kilometers away in a mint neither man will ever see. The seller does not count them. He pulls out a pair of shears and cuts one of the coins in half. Think about what is missing from this scene. No bank has vouched for that silver. No mint of their own stamped it. No king guarantees what it is worth. No written contract binds the deal. No court will enforce it across the sea. And yet within minutes, the bargain clears, and both men walk away certain they were not cheated. Not because Norsemen were trusting people. They were famously not. Because they had built a system, a complete monetary system without a state behind it. That is what this video is about. Every layer, every instrument, and the last layer, the one that actually held it all together, has nothing to do with silver at all. Let me ask you something. What is money when nobody is in charge of it? There's this image most people carry around. The Viking gets rich the way a burglar does, sail somewhere soft, burn a monastery, drag the loot home. That's wrong, not even close. The raids happened, and they mattered, but follow the silver itself, and it tells a different story. The island of Gotland in the Baltic, a place of farmers with no towns and no army worth the name, has yielded around 700 silver hoards, more buried treasure per square kilometer than anywhere else on Earth. In 1999, at a farm called Spillings, archaeologists lifted the 2 largest ever found, 67 kilograms of silver, over 14,000 coins. And here is the detail that breaks the raider myth. Almost none of it is church plate or Frankish loot. It is overwhelmingly Arab coinage, dirhams, struck in Samarkand and Tashkent and Baghdad, carried north through Russia by trade. Coins from the caliphate outnumber everything else across the Baltic by the tens of thousands. You do not raid your way to 100,000 coins from a superpower 2 months' travel away. You trade your way there. Furs, amber, walrus ivory, and human beings sold east up the river roads, silver flowing back north in payment. The Norse got rich the way port cities get rich, not the way burglars do, which raises the real question, the one that should sound impossible. The Arab world had mints, inspectors, courts, a caliph's name stamped on every coin. Scandinavia had none of that. No state, no bank, no small change. So how do you run an economy on that scale with no institutions behind it? The answer is a system with layers, each one more clever than the last. Start with the move that shocks every modern viewer. They cut the money to pieces. Archaeologists call it hack silver. Coins sheared in half, arm rings chopped into stubs, brooches snipped into slivers, ingots nicked and quartered. The Quartile hoard, pulled out of a riverbank in Lancashire in 1840, holds around 40 kilograms of it. 8,500 pieces, everything from whole dirhams to fragments lighter than a fingernail. To us, it looks like vandalism. It is actually the founding insight of the entire system. A coin, the Norse understood, is just a government's promise that the right amount of silver is inside. Strip the promise away, and what remains is the metal itself. And metal cannot lie about its weight. So Norse money was not the coin, it was the gram. Value lived in weight and purity, and nothing else. A Frankish denier, an Arab dirham, half a Saxon brooch, a bar poured in a soapstone mold. All of it was the same currency the moment it hit the scale pan. And every piece could make exact change. Need 3 grams, cut 3 grams. One currency, infinitely divisible, accepted from Dublin to the Volga, with no exchange rate and no issuing authority to collapse. And the world was priced in it, precisely. The law codes the Norse lands wrote down price everything in weighed silver. An ounce for this, a mark for that. A milk cow, a couple of ounces. A good ocean-going ship, a small fortune in marks. The units tell you how deep the system ran. The aehrir, the Norse ounce, survives to this day as the ore in Swedish pockets, the way the British pound still remembers being an actual pound of silver. This was not barter with extra steps. It was a full-price system, quotes, change, savings, denominated in grams. If you've ever held a banknote up to the light to check the watermark, you know the anxiety this design deletes. A note is worth something only if the printer is honest and everyone agrees to pretend. Bullion is worth exactly what it weighs. There was just one catch, and everything else in this story exists because of it. If money is weight, then every single transaction, every market day, every dockside bargain depends on one question: whose scale do you trust? The answer came as an instrument, the most underrated piece of Viking engineering there is. A folding balance scale, cast in bronze, beam and pans collapsing into a case that fits in a closed fist. Merchants carried them the way we carry phones, and they were buried with them. The graves at Birka, Sweden's great trading town, hold scale after scale laid beside swords, and at Torksey in England, the winter camp of the Great Army in 872, the ground has given up scales, weights, and chopped silver by the hundred. Even an invasion force carried the accounting department. Pick one of the weights up and your hand learns something before your eyes do. A lump smaller than a die, heavy out of all proportion, dense enough that it feels dishonest. That density is the design. If you've ever zeroed a kitchen scale and weighed something down to the single gram, you know the strange authority of an exact number. A Norse merchant's whole livelihood balanced on numbers that exact, read off a beam the length of a finger, in wind, on a beach, with a stranger watching. The scale is only half the instrument. The other half is a set of small, standardized weights, and these are the tell. From the 860s onward, two shapes sweep the whole Norse world almost overnight. Little cube octahedrons of brass and barrel-shaped weights of iron jacketed in bronze. A design that cannot be shaved down or hollowed out without the tampering being obvious, because the shell would break. Weight sets from Dublin to Russia agree with each other to within fractions of a gram. Tuned around the same units, the sagas price the world in. The aehrir of about 27 grams, 8 of them to a mark. Take that in for a second. No Bureau of Standards, no legislation, no inspectors. And merchants, a continent apart, carried mutually consistent, tamper-evident, calibrated instruments. There's a real debate here, and it matters. The new weights appear just as Arab silver floods north, and they align suspiciously well with Islamic weight standards. So some scholars say the Norse simply imported the caliphate's metrology wholesale. Others argue the network standardized itself, the way shipping containers did, because a trader with strange weights was a trader nobody dealt with. Borrowed system or convergent engineering, drop your view below. Either way, the scale settled what the silver weighed. It could not settle what the silver was. For that, the Norse built something stranger. Because silver can lie, not about weight, but about substance. The early medieval world was full of forgeries, copper cores dipped in silver, lead hearts under a bright skin, coins that ring true on the scale and are worth 1/10 of their weight. The Norse answer was brutally direct. Test every piece, forever. Pick up a dirham from a Baltic hoard, and its surface is covered in tiny stab marks, pecks made by driving a knife point into the metal to feel whether it bites soft like silver, or skids on hidden copper to flake off any plating at the wound. Some coins carry a handful. Some carry dozens layered over years in the hands of trader after trader. Read that surface like a document, and you realize what you are holding: an audit trail. Every peck is one merchant at one market refusing to extend trust, and every peck the next merchant sees is a test already passed. The verification was distributed across the entire network, stamped into the money itself. Nobody certified the currency, so everybody did, continuously. If this is the kind of detail you come here for, a like takes a second and genuinely helps. Now widen the lens, because the scale of the network this machinery serviced is hard to overstate. In 922, the Arab diplomat Ibn Fadlan met Norse traders in the flesh on the Volga and wrote it down. The ships, the tattoos, the haggling, the silver. Furs and slaves moved south through Bulgar on the Volga Bend. Dirhams from the Samanid mines of Central Asia moved north, in such volume that the coin finds of Sweden are dominated by money struck in what is now Uzbekistan and Afghanistan. We should say the dark part plainly, because the system does not deserve a soft focus. A major export flowing down those rivers was human beings, captives sold east in numbers large enough that the trade left its mark on language itself. The wealth in those Gotland hordes was real, and some of it was paid for in lives. That is not a detail the scales recorded. They weighed silver the same no matter what had bought it. Then, around the 960s, the flow began to die. The Samanid mines faltered, the dirhams thinned out, and the whole system pivoted west without missing a beat. The same ships, scales, and weights turned on England, where the response was the Danegeld, state-organized payoffs so vast that archaeologists like to point out more of King Ethelred's silver pennies have been found in Sweden than in England itself. A monetary system with no capital city had outlived one silver source and simply plugged in another. But an economy is more than metal and instruments. Which brings us to the layer nobody talks about. Here's something that almost never appears in the popular version of this story, and it might be the most elegant layer of all. The Norse had no vaults, no deposit accounts, no paper. So where do you put wealth in a world like that? You wear it in public, on your body, and you give it away. Melt your silver into arm rings and neck rings of predictable weight, and your fortune becomes visible, portable, and spendable in one object. Hack silver hoards are full of ring fragments precisely because rings were struck off and spent by the gram. In Scotland and Ireland, the Norse even cast arm rings around a repeating standard, roughly 26 grams, a unit of account you could shake hands with. Ibn Fadlan saw the retail version on the Volga. When a trader's fortune crossed 10,000 dirhams, he said, the man had a neck ring made for his wife. One ring per 10,000, a net worth statement walking through the market. And that is the point. In a world without banks, wealth had to be witnessed to be real. The public ledger was social. A chieftain who hoarded quietly was nothing. A chieftain who gave rings, funded voyages, and fed halls was running a credit system. Every gift a deposit, repayable in loyalty, labor, and spears. The saga's highest praise for a lord is literally ring giver. The ring reached even into law. Saga accounts describe a sacred arm ring kept in the temple, reddened in sacrifice on which oaths were sworn. The same object doing duty as vault, contract, and courtroom Bible. If you've ever done business on a handshake with someone whose word was the only collateral, you know exactly what technology this is. And the silver that went into the ground? Snorri records the old belief that a man enjoyed in the afterlife what he had buried in this one. But notice what buried hoards are in a world where everyone tests everything. A safe deposit box requiring no banker, only memory. 700 hoards on Gotland are 700 accounts whose owners never came back to make the withdrawal. Every one of them is a voyage that ended wrong, and proof the system held value so well that 1,000 years later we are still finding the deposits intact. Step back from the details for a moment. Money that was pure weight, so it needed no king to vouch for it. A folding scale and tamper-evident weights, so any two strangers could settle a price on any beach in the known world. A testing culture that turned every knife-point peck into a distributed audit, so forgeries died in the network. A river of Eastern silver swapped for a Western one the decade it ran dry. And over it all, a social layer that stored wealth in rings, reputations, and gifts, a bank made of people. No single layer worked alone. The scale is useless without the weight standard. The standard is useless without the testing. And all of it is useless unless the man across the bale of furs plays by the same rules from Dublin to the Volga. These were not lucky raiders sitting on stolen treasure. They were engineers of trust, running, without a single institution, the things we pay central banks, mints, assay offices, and credit bureaus to do for us. And we should be honest about the comparison. Our money is a promise stacked on a promise, paper backed by policy, backed by confidence in institutions most of us will never see the inside of. Freeze the network for 48 hours, and the card in your pocket buys nothing. Their system ran for 3 centuries, across half the known world, through famines, wars, and the death of its own silver supply, on sheep, ships, bronze scales, and arithmetic. No committee ever met to design it. No authority ever enforced it. It simply worked, because every piece of it could be checked by anyone, anywhere, with a knife and a weight. There is a quiet punchline to this story. When Scandinavian kings finally grew strong enough, around the year 1000, the first thing they did was mint coins, herald Bluetooth's crosses, then whole royal coinages, and declare the stamp, not the scale, the measure of value. The bullion world faded, because a crown had finally arrived to make the promise. The free-floating gram gave way to the king's face, and, in a sense, the Viking age of money ended right there. If this is the kind of history you come here for, not Hollywood raids and horned helmets, but how these people actually built systems that worked, systems we needed another 1,000 years and whole institutions to rebuild. This channel exists for exactly that. Subscribing means you'll be here for what comes next, and there is a great deal more to tell. The next time you tap your card, that half-second handshake between your bank, a network, and a merchant's terminal, picture the fog at Hedeby. 2 strangers, a bale of furs, a handful of chopped foreign silver, and a small bronze scale doing the work of all 3 institutions at once. Their deal cleared in under a minute, and no one had to trust anyone. The stamp was a promise. The scale was proof.